All right, and we are rolling with Tye and Micah Jackson from Worldview Wellness. And it's just Worldview Wellness, right? It's not like ministries or organization or anything
No,
else.
no,
Okay,
just what
so
we love it.
that's what I put on the description box. I put in worldviewwellness.com, but I wasn't sure if it was, I wanted to make sure it was right before I got rolling. And before I get started, I just want to tell everybody I'm super excited about this because I get a lot of feedback and comments when I share about my dad's journey on Twitter. And so it made me really want to do a year anniversary from the time that I got the horrifying phone call. And I wanted to kind of go through the whole like journey in the last year. And of course we won't cover it all, but as much as we can. And I really wanted my dad's team here because they have been integral in this process. And as we go through, I'll explain the importance of each person, both Tye and Micah, and then how they hit us and where they hit us, and then how it affected my father. But before we get started, I want to start with a thank you to Cheryl Beck, who introduced us. I trust her so much, and she's a former nurse, and it meant a lot to me that she co-signed on you guys. And then I want to say hi to my entire family, because I'm sure at some point my aunts, uncles, nieces, everybody will probably see this. So I wanted to say hi to everybody. Also wanted to thank both of my sisters who have just been phenomenal partners in this. Like it is completely, one's too burned out, the other one's helping. Like it's been seamless. And I just want to thank Dina, and I want to thank Jill and their husbands and my former husband, who have helped us with the funding of this whole thing. And then my children, who also stepped up and cooked some. And so what I would say as far as being a family member is it's absolutely terrifying to get that phone call. And when I first got the phone call, which was exactly a year ago today, it was somebody that knows my dad that called, that was with him, that said, he's really bad. You need to do something. I was out on a walk. There was nothing I could do. I was a half hour away from the house. I said, I'll call you as soon as I get home. And then I called him, and he was so bad. I said, you either go to the hospital with them, or I'm going to call an ambulance. And so it was really bad. He could barely talk. It was horrible. And so what had happened, just so everyone knows, when somebody's very strong in their spirit, my dad is a former Marine, and when they're strong in their spirit, they tend to be able to handle things until it is just not able to happen anymore. And so he was, I wouldn't say hiding the fact that he was losing weight, but kind of protecting and trying to not make us worry, even though I had 2 months earlier offered to take him in and help feed him properly, because I knew he was a bachelor eater, and I knew that wasn't going to be any good for someone his age. And so the most horrifying part of it is the first week, I would say, in understanding what's going on and making 1,000 decisions. And this is where Tye came in. So Tye, tell us what you do for Worldview Wellness.
I am an admin, but I'm actually the client advocate for Worldview Wellness. So when people call asking about our services and whether we can help them or not, and I do want to clarify that we do have a lot of clients who have cancer, who are actively cancering, but we also see people who just want to know what kind of supplements to take, who need, a basic lab panel, who want us to walk them through, kind of some lifestyle changes and things like that. But basically what I do is I tell people what it is that we do in this business and how we intend to walk people through whatever it is that they're facing, whether it's a chronic illness, whether it's diabetes, heart disease, whether it's just simply needing to know how to live better, how to live, in a more pure fashion, in a God way, not a man way.
Yes, I love your 3 pillars too.
Yeah, and so basically I just talk to people about what it is that we do, and the excellent work of my medicine man husband, and basically as a client advocate, I hold our clients' hands through the entire plan. If they've got questions, we've got answers. If they need a steadying hand, we're here to pray with them, pray for them. We're here to talk them through it. We have walked people to remission. We have, and I want to say too that it's not always about remission. Sometimes it's just about balance. We've walked people to balance, just like Papa Tom. That's what I
Yep.
like to call your daddy.
Yep.
Um, and he's doing beautifully. And so sometimes it's just about that balance and giving quality and quantity of life. And sometimes we walk people to the door of eternity. So we do it all. We
Yeah,
do it
yeah.
all.
It's a heavy job what you have unless people come to you early, and we did not. You know,
Yeah.
my dad was first in the hospital. He weighed 140 pounds, but then he spent 10 days in another hospital. That was emergency room, then the hospital, and he lost 10 pounds. So he went down to 130 pounds in just a matter of probably 10 days. So by the time he went to the rehab center and they weighed him, he was only 130 pounds. And this is a man that normally weighed somewhere between 180 and 190. So it was a huge difference. And he was extremely weak. He had lesions up his back, which were fracturing his bones. And because of that, everything hurt, no matter which direction he went, because these bones were literally cracking, one in particular. And so, so I'm going to rewind a little bit because I really want to give my opinion on what it feels like to call Tye. First of all, before I had even put $1 in her bank account and and said, yes, we want to hire you, she spent, you know, a good hour on the phone with me, prayed, gave me hope, gave me specific instances similar to my father's of actual patients that they have walked through the process that had a worse situation than my dad, a man who had lesions head to toe. And so it was just like, oh, like somebody just took my heart and just put like a warm blanket on top, you know. It was just, it's going to make me tear up because it was really powerful phone call. And that was the thing that my friend said that I sent to you that had breast cancer, because she didn't have anyone. She didn't have family that was supporting. She didn't have a husband. And so Tye became her golden parachute. Like, you know, here's this beautiful person. She goes, I feel fantastic after I just got off the you know. And so I really cannot stress the importance enough of that hope that she is able to transmit through faith and experience. You know, it is so much the experience that you have. And so if you guys wouldn't mind just giving kind of a quick summary of what worldview wellness, the science side does.
I guess I'll take that one.
I'm going to let you have that one.
All right. So, at the end of the day, you know, this is more of a holistic, naturopathic, you know, approach. I am well versed. I have a, you know, very conventional education. I'm a physician assistant. I don't use my license for the business because we are consultants and we don't, you know, this is not, you know, medicine, you know, in air quotes there. So essentially what we do is we try to meet every person where they're at and get a very thorough background on them. We have, you know, as you well know, Carmen, we have a very lengthy intake form. Now that lengthy intake form, Carmen, that you are familiar with, we have a shorter one for people who are just general wellness, who don't have big, huge issues. So we try to meet everybody where they're at. If they do have more complex issues, then we channel them into that side of the business. If they're just general wellness, then we channel them into the other side of the business. But my job is essentially to explore and evaluate their terrain. And when I say terrain, what I mean by that is, think of an old farmer, you know, like maybe 100 or 200 years ago, someone that would have farmed. There was no commercial fertilizer or feed or anything like that. And so 100 or 200 years ago, a farmer back then would have been very familiar with crop rotations and really sowing into the soil so that there's good, you know, healthy soil because they rely on that soil to feed the plant. The plant is only as good as the soil that it's in that style of farming. You know, fast forward to where we are today, and the soil that most agriculture is done on is completely just horrible soil. But because there's commercial fertilizers and and other products that they can use in the in the growing of those agricultural products. They can kind of get away with that, but it's not the most ideal way to do things, because it's kind of trying to shortcut and hack nature, which never really works well. So essentially, I do that for the human body. I'm looking at the entirety of their terrain. The difference between me and, say, what a conventional clinician would, the targets would be, I'm looking at the human being in their entirety. I'm looking at, what is their gut doing? What are their hormones doing? Are they toxic? Do they have an overwhelming toxic burden? What's their emotional life like? What's their spiritual life like? I'm looking at, I'm looking at a lot of different aspects that may or may not have anything to do with the disease. But if you take someone's terrain in its entirety and you evaluate that, you will see the fingerprint, so to speak, of what is causing the disease. So essentially, by evaluating the terrain and not focusing on the disease, which is what conventional medicine does. Conventional medicine looks at essentially the symptoms of a disease process or an illness or autoimmune disease or condition or whatever it is. They look at the symptoms and they say, okay, well, here are pharmaceuticals, or here are surgeries, or here's radiation, or they've got many different tools in their toolkit, but they're all designed to treat the symptoms of the disease. And so by effect they're treating the disease. They're not treating the person. So that's the big, huge difference between what I do. Is I'm looking at the entire terrain of a person and I'm trying to evaluate, okay, what's this gut function look like? Hippocrates said over 2,000 years ago, all disease begins in the gut. And I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, I very rarely do an evaluation on anybody, well or sick or otherwise, that doesn't have some issues in their gut. So I look at the gut. I'll sometimes get a hormone panel. I'll look at toxins. I'll look at heavy metals. I really do a very thorough evaluation of the entire terrain. And then that way I can combine that with what I see on the intake form. And then after, you said earlier, we like to spend time with our clients.
Yes, we do. So
I'm a firm believer in that you are always going to be handicapped, as a healer or a clinician or whatever, and you're going to be handicapped until you get to know your patients or your clients. Until you have that relationship built with them, it's going to be very hard for them to, have 100% buy-in with what you're trying to do, and you have to be able to work together as a team. So essentially that's it. We try to build relationships with our people. And then from the scientific side of things, I have a lot of really, really cool tools that I can use to evaluate that terrain. And then that gives me the knowledge that I need to not necessarily fill in every single hole that I see, but pick out the ones that are the most important and that are going to give people the biggest bang for their buck, so to speak. And so that's what I do on my side.
Right. And when Mike was talking about the time and relationships, as you well know, Carmen, I mean, how important is the amount of time that we spend together? Oh, we've got a rogue kitty. We've been out of town. Our cat is not very happy.
Always
now. My goodness. Anyways, but building relationships is the most important thing that we can do for our clients. And I didn't understand that, until I started to get the experience of what it was like to build a relationship with these people. And we love our clients. We don't care what their background is. We don't care what their ethnicity is. We don't care what their faith base is. We are going to love these people. And that is gold. Excuse us. Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
On the loose in here.
We have two, and I have to put them up when I'm on the podcast.
Well, we try to keep him outside, but he wanders around the house and meows like he's dying.
Well, and we literally just walked in the door from our vacation, so
he misses you.
Right.
Oh, anyone here that has a cat totally understands. And so what happened with me too was, at the time that it happened, it was my sister's birthdays. And so both of them, one was in Japan and one was in the Bahamas. And I had to carry the whole thing for over 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks before one of them could get there to help me. And then I literally am on a 4-way call, Tye, my sisters, I think maybe even my dad was on. No, he wasn't on that one. And then I was kind of expressing some stuff, and I was just speaking, and literally Tye intuited that I had capped out. And she's like, sometimes people cap out. Have you hit, have you tapped out? Like, are you ready to tap out and let your sisters take over? And I cannot tell you, I don't think I would have identified it, because you get so much grace when you're going through something, that you just handle what needs to be done. And it was such a blessing. And my sisters, that's all they needed to hear. Both of them were like doing everything that they could to make sure that I got a break for a while, that I could go and relax. And because it was, cooking every day, it was checking with stuff. And then there's so many things going on with medical bills, and where are we going to put them, and what rehab center, and it's all coming at you like really fast.
Yeah.
Also, my dad took a lot of comfort in speaking to Tye as well. And so that was another nice thing. The intake form is intense, but I think it's kind of like it eliminates a lot of time wasted in conversation, because he can look it down at all the information in the areas that he needs the most.
Mhm.
And it's funny because so many of my friends that have other things that have other ailments other than cancer have called you guys, and they're very happy with everything that you've done. And like you said, it's not the intense version. It's just, oh, we're getting blood tests, we're doing it for optimal health, which is also fantastic.
I'm not even sure if you realize how many people you have funneled to our business. Just
I
as a
love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to say hi to Jill and Eric Johnson, and to Paulina. And like you said, hi to Cheryl. Cheryl is one of my favorite people. So hi, Cheryl, and I love you. And I'm so glad that she connected us.
Yeah, it is.
What a family we have, what a team.
It is. It's really incredible. And then as far as like how I believe in spontaneous healing, and to me, you guys are that step under spontaneous healing. So it's like stuff is happening because it's also so deeply spiritual, and having faith in your decisions, and trusting the process, trusting the God-given machine that we have, that is our body, And I would love for you guys to speak on that, because I think if you were to collapse any client's journey, you could see it is spontaneous healing in a way. And healing is relative. I understand Dad isn't technically cured from cancer, but he is nearly symptom-free. It's really incredible. Do you guys mind if I just show some pictures real quick of?
No, go for it.
Not at all. His call
I just want to share so people know kind of what's going on here. I'm going to pick a few windows. First of all, this is my dad as a Marine when he was probably 21, probably like right around the time that I was born.
Yeah.
And that has been the reason I picked this picture, one, is just to kind of give people a background, but two, because I believe it's a big piece of the healing process is the attitude.
Yeah.
And his attitude has been absolutely like a Marine, like he knows what he's after, and he is not deviating from the rules. Well, there's some rules he's just like, nope, not doing that.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing that I think is really cool, is the body is very forgiving. And even though Dad's not like literally doing this approach that you have suggested to the T, as a matter of fact, I wouldn't even say he's 60% there.
Right.
Here we are a year later, and he is absolutely doing phenomenal. So hold on, I'm going to show you some more pictures. This is a picture of him. Share screen again. And this is him. This was in July. So he was so excited.
Oh, wow.
He could fit in his dress blues jacket again, because he was thin enough. Because I don't think he could fit in it when he was 185, 190. But that was a big deal for the whole family, because I don't know if you noticed, he's not on his walker. He should have been, but it was kind of a thing that he was wanting to do, is kind of walk into the room and show all of his grandsons how he could fit in his dress blues again. Yeah. And then let's see, I'm going to show you guys what he looked like. Oops, wrong one. You can tell I'm not used to doing these presentations. All right, share screen one more time, or maybe 2 more times. I want to show you what he looked like in the hospital. Not very pretty.
Yeah.
Um, it was, he was also completely out of it because they were giving him pain meds,
Oh yeah, I was gonna say.
which I'm, not a fan of, but I understand, and then I wanted to show just one more picture because it cracks me up. He's so cute. He weighs in at night because he weighs more. Most of us weigh in the morning. So I took a screenshot of all, shoot, let me see. I think I might have gotten rid of it by accident. Took a screenshot. Oh, there it is. Okay. He always sends us his weight.
Nice.
I didn't catch the first couple because the nurses were weighing him then, because we couldn't weigh him. He had to be weighed a special way because he couldn't stand up the first.
Right.
And so he had to get to 100. He had to gain like 16 pounds before he could actually do that.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
a pretty
I
good
would
trend there.
love your comments on any of those things.
Well, there's several things that I want to speak to really quickly. Is, you said something really perfect about our business, is that your dad was probably not even hitting at 60% of what the plan is, but his quality of life is immeasurable right now. It's so good. We're not here to judge anybody. We don't expect anybody. We're not perfect. We don't expect other people to be perfect. We're not here to finger wag anybody. We're not your parents. We're here to love you. We're here to encourage you. We're here to speak the truth to you. And we do have we can facilitate mistletoe. We can facilitate all kinds of things through our business. But we do have some clients who are like, yeah, no, I just can't be poked again. I can't do it. Okay. The journey is in your hands. You are behind the wheel.
Yeah.
You get to be the driver in your journey. So Papa Tom gets to be the driver in his journey. And having said that, you will get out of it what you put into it. Almost all the time. Sometimes, there's a lot of variables there, but Papa Tom was all in, and you girls were all in. And I'm going to tell you something, when the families are involved, like you ladies jumped in, and with the kids cooking too, and everybody being there, and really binds the family together in purpose and intent. I think that really helps the journey be so much more optimized, but it gets everybody on board with eating better, with understanding what you're putting in your mouth. But the thing that I do love about our business, and Micah has to remind me constantly, it is not your journey, it's theirs. You don't get to make the final decision. They get to make their final decision on what they will do and what they won't do. Right. And it's then our job. For instance, if we have a cancering client who wants to do oncology, it's not our job to say, no, don't do that. Right. It's our job to give them informed consent, the pros and the cons, and then it is their job to tell us what they want to do with that information. And then it is our job to really hold their terrain together, regardless of what they're choosing to do on the other side of that coin. So,
right. Yeah, it's a pet peeve of mine for medical people to, do the it's my way or the highway kind of.
I think it's ego.
Well, I'll tell you, that's the way you're trained in medical school. Mm-hmm. You're essentially trained throughout medical school to kind of put that chip on your shoulder, and they ingrain that God complex into us in medical school. And so, that it probably took me at least a good 7 or 8 years after being in conventional medicine to get to the place where it wasn't very frustrating on a daily basis to run into patients who weren't doing things the way that you told them to do, and I mean, I'm just as guilty as the next guy. I would talk down to people, and my arrogance and ego would come out. And through a series of events, I kind of learned that lesson, because I had some good mentors in my life saying, your job as a clinician is just to provide another option, and it's their job to do it or not do it. But you can't get tied up in what they pick, and you can't get tied up in the outcome. All you can do is provide the best care that you can, and you have to leave it. You have to leave it at that, or else you're just going to be an angry, bitter person. And so, and that's a lot easier said than done.
Mhm.
Shoulder.
Mhm. Yeah, and one of the things that, like, somebody in the chat was saying that they don't trust allopathic or natural cancer therapies through, they had friends that died early.
Yeah.
What I would say to that, and I think it's a very valid point, but I also know many people who did it who still continued to drink alcohol, but they're
Oh,
saying
yeah.
that they went on the natural path, or they said that they did naturopath, but they're also doing other things, and they're not letting people know their whole thing. And quite frankly, it's not anyone's business. I really do believe
Right.
it's between that person, God,
Right.
and as much consent and as much information as that as they can gather,
Right.
for that. It's a profound personal change that happens in someone that really wants to heal.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that's outside of people's, that's like outside of that's outside of me. I can pray for dad. I can bring him all the healthy food in the world, but if he doesn't put it in his mouth, then
Right.
then we now have, a different situation, even though people are saying, oh, he's taking the natural route, when really he's over there eating pudding at the rehab center, and none of
Yeah.
us know, right?
Right. Right.
And that's when you have
But
to look
that
at your
isn't
own
the
personal
case.
integrity.
Yeah, that isn't the case. He
Yeah.
had a profound transformation in making this choice that he was going to use every bit of self-discipline he had
Yeah.
to shift. What's cool about it is he now craves food, where we had to force him, like, try to be creative and make things that try to taste good, because he had originally he didn't have any taste buds. He had been so depleted by the cancer
Yeah.
that, I can't even begin to list all of the ways he's back.
Well, and bachelor food is addictive.
It is.
If you're eating all of the comfort and convenience foods that are out there, there's a reason why people that are on that meal plan stick with it.
Yeah.
And the food executives and the people that work in big food, they have paid, probably billions of dollars in research to try to figure out what kind of combination of sweet and salty and crunchy and, all those things, in addition to, chemicals that they put in the food, to make that perfect food to where it kind of lights up your brain with all of those, sensations and tastes. And so it can be a struggle to get off of those things. Yeah, I do think I would like to go back, because you said that you had that listener that texted in that said that she wouldn't trust conventional allopathic medicine at all. That's really what I specialize in. I'm in the middle. I understand what's good about the allopathic model, and I understand, what's good about the natural model. And of course, I would tell everybody that, hey, look, I mean, if you really want to be healthy in your life, take a natural approach. There's not one person alive on the face of this earth that has a pharmaceutical deficiency.
It's true.
But yet you go to an allopathic doctor, and that's how they treat you. Oh, well, you need this, this pharmaceutical, and there's no mention about root causes. So, what I've been able to do throughout this course of my career is kind of figure out what part of the allopathic side of medicine is good, and and of course I have a whole lot of experience in the integrative side and in the functional medicine side. So of course the backbone of my plans are in that. But I'll also tell somebody, and of course it's not up to me to tell them what to do, but I will always be honest with people and tell them what I would do if it was me, or if it was Tye or anyone in our family. It's like, look, let's get down to real brass tacks here, and let's talk about what we would actually do. Not that you have to do that, but at the end of the day, there are instances where I would tell somebody, hey, look, I know that you didn't want to do this chemotherapy, but I do think that would probably, for where you are right at this particular second, that chemotherapy is actually going to be a net benefit for you.
In some cases.
And then we might, and then I might recommend, and kind of coach them through a potential conversation with their oncologist to say, hey, I want to do this, but let's time it differently. Let's, lower the dose so that we're not doing maximum tolerated, chemotherapy, which in my opinion is rarely beneficial because I've had people in my own family that died from that approach, the maximally tolerated chemotherapy. And so, that kind of is close to home. But there are times when conventional approaches are necessary in combination with what that holistic naturopathic functional approach.
It's awesome. And so I was thinking too about all of the different milestones because I've been kind of keeping track of them. And at first, he literally couldn't lift his head. He could not drink water. He was like, oh gosh, like everything was horrible. He was moved to a different hospital on March 5th. And then the very first time that I talked to Tye was on March 7th. And then he was in the rehab center on March 10th. He was off pain meds on March 14th. We found out that there was one lingering one because I could recognize he was being out of it. And I'm like, he's not normally like this. He was very lucid when he was off the medicine. And I do think that that's something that I would love to hear your take on, because to me, as soon as you can get off those things, you need to. What are your thoughts on that one?
Pain medicine is, great for when you need it. I would never tell somebody that is, having, we'll just call it dramatic quality of life problems,
Right.
due to discomfort, that they shouldn't take an opioid. If that's all they have access to. There are many, many other things that we can do, supplements and CBD oils and cannabis and there's just a whole lot of different approaches to pain. I would probably say that you go to the opioids last when everything else hasn't worked.
Right.
And if the pain, like where your dad was at, I would not have told somebody in his boat, yeah, just pull him off of all of the opioids.
Right.
Because we want to provide quality of life. Of course, we love to provide quantity of life too and extend life. And, we're always, hoping for and working towards a cure.
Right.
But we have to also acknowledge that, it's still cancer. And nobody has figured out cancer all the way, and I'm certainly not an exception to that. But I do think that we have a really good track record for improving quality of life, and then in most cases also quantity. So
we've got lots of clients.
But yeah, there's
stage 4.
There's many different things that you can do for pain. But then again, it goes back to the terrain. Where is the terrain messed up? What do you need to do to, kind of fill in the biggest holes in the terrain? And a lot of times, if you can do that, then pain's not nearly as much of an issue. So,
right. And then we began just a keto-like diet, because this was before you guys had us reading the book, and we hadn't read the book yet on
right.
How to actually feed him optimally for the metabolic approach to cancer. Which I absolutely loved the book, but I couldn't talk anyone else into reading it. I'm sure Dad would listen to a book on tape, but he was like, I can't get this thing to work. And so then the next thing that was on here that I thought was pretty powerful was when he started to be able to eat more food than Dina and I had anticipated, because he kept resisting what we were giving him. Like when I made him 2 eggs, he was like, oh, that's all I can stand, So I put 3 eggs in just to see, and so it was really cool, because all of a sudden out of nowhere, he started eating more food. And that, as you know, was a huge sign.
Oh, yeah.
And then let's see, at the end of March was when he was able to use a walker for the first time and get out of the wheelchair. So we're talking pretty quickly. I mean, this is within, 21 days, maybe even just a little bit more than that since the time he went into the hospital. And that was just with diet.
Mm-hmm.
And that was before we did the goat milk and all of the other things that really helped. And let's see, by April 30th, he had gained 10 pounds. And then on May 2nd, the Micah stuff kicked in, and that's when we started getting the supplement list. And I would love for you to share with people, because everybody's like, what supplements is he on? And they don't understand that, like, I can share with you all the supplements he's on, but if they're not right for your blood, then, you know, or your situation, you know, so.
Well, so yeah, you know, I do have lots of our clients on some of the same supplements, but every single one of our clients are only on the supplements that match their labs.
Right.
So it's a completely, you know, it's a completely individualized approach, and it depends on what their terrain looks like. So I always go back to that. So, you know, that can, you know, like on the wellness side of our business, when we're doing just a regular, you know, hey, I just want to optimize my health and that type of thing, I try to keep the supplement list to a minimum, and go by the old. Here's another Hippocrates or Hippocrates-ism: let medicine be your food and food be your medicine. So, you know, if your lifestyle has been optimized through nutrition, which is your diet, and of course you can add some supplements into there, hydration, movement, exercise, and then peace, which is your whole emotional and spiritual perspective on things. And so if you've optimized all of that, well, then you don't need to be on a whole lot of supplements.
Right.
You know, now, you know, the unfortunate reality of the world that we live in is that the world's been so corrupted at this particular point that the soil doesn't have the same type of nutrition in it, for the reasons that we talked about earlier, you know, about how we do things the wrong way now in agriculture. But you know, if you're really putting a lot of effort into your diet, and you know, the you know, the major components of your health, which is nutrition, hydration, movement, and peace, if you're focused on that, you really shouldn't need to be taking a whole, you know, bucket full of supplements.
Right.
But for people that have larger health, you know, hurdles to overcome, sometimes it can be very beneficial to put somebody on several different supplements. And so, you know, when we do all of the testing, you know, for people that are in bad shape, we will recommend thousands of dollars of testing. And so I know more about these people than they've ever known about themselves at any point in the past, you know, and I know more about them than any doctor that's ever seen them has ever known about them, because I'm not just looking at the disease process. That's just, you know, you're just looking at symptoms there. So I'm not necessarily, I mean, I'm aware of their disease process, but I'm not focused on that. You know, I kind of put that off to the side and say, okay, you know, I'm aware of this disease process, and this is kind of, you know, where I think it's coming from. So I'm trying to evaluate for drivers, and then I've got all of these thousands of dollars of test results to go through. And so I don't have to guess. As a matter of fact, the metabolic approach to cancer, one of their kind of taglines is test, assess, address, don't guess. That comes from Winter herself.
Assess, address, and then
guess.
Don't guess. Okay, that's good. I like that.
So I don't guess. You know, whenever I'm putting people on a supplement plan, you know, it might be as few as 4 or 5, or it might be as many as 20 different supplements, but I'm picking each one of those supplements for a very focused reason that comes directly from my investigation. And so, you know, maybe a few of those might come from the intake form, but then all of the other ones come off of the, you know, off of the lab results that I evaluate.
Can you kind of explain what you mean when you say that you're looking for drivers in someone's illness?
Yeah. So, for instance, with different types of cancers, certain types of cancers are more metabolic in nature. I mean, they're all metabolic. If you're, you know, since I'm trained in the metabolic approach to cancer, you know, that goes back to Otto Warburg in the 1920s and 1930s, the Warburg mechanism, which talks about how the metabolism of cancer is different than the metabolism of normal healthy cells. So really, there's probably less than 5% or 4% of cancers that have a true genetic origin. The rest of the 96% of cancers are pretty much, you know, metabolic at their core. But then there's multiple other ways that kind of can impact that dysfunction in the metabolism. So certain cancers are more driven by toxins. Certain cancers are more driven by hormone changes. Certain cancers are driven, more purely by metabolic factors. And so, I can look at a particular cancer in and of itself, or an autoimmune process, or whatever whatever malady the client brings to the table, and we can look at that, and then we can go back in their history. Carmen, you probably remember our first visit with Tom, where we go back and we start at the day of birth.
Takes hours.
We build a timeline. And we even go back prior to that, really, because one of the first questions I ask is, are you aware of any difficulties your mom had with conception? Were there any complications with conception, the gestational term, labor and delivery? Then we work through their childhood, and we build a complete timeline all the way up until the day that we're talking.
Yeah.
And there are clues that that can pop up in just building the timeline. And then, of course, I've got 50 plus pages of intake to review, and all of these labs that we have to review. So I've got probably as complete a picture as anybody can have. And so from that perspective, it really allows me to identify, because this person is an individual human being that's got their own unique perspective and experiences. They've got a particular disease or illness or malady that has its own set of potential drivers. And then I've got all these tests and all of this other data. So I can really, in most cases, it's not quite clear in all cases, but in most cases I can say, okay, this here was probably a primary driver, and I might be able to pick 3 or 4 primary drivers, whether that's hormones or toxins or gut dysfunction or too much stress, or there's just so many different aspects of the terrain. But that's why our visits are so long. When we do visits, they're especially when we're getting started with people, they're usually 2-hour visits, and so we have time to pick that apart and to really explore their terrain so that we can get to the bottom of things.
I also really liked how you guys allowed us to go from like a monthly or every 6-week testing to a quarterly testing, and that feels really good right there. I have to say it's nice to know. It is something that I think the patient doesn't like as much, but once they get the results back, if they're following the protocol, it's most likely going to be amazing. And like even every time they've been stable or better in most areas. Every once in a while, there's like out of 50 areas, 1 or 2 that he needs to look at, which is incredible. Another thing that was so amazing is as these things are happening, one of the first things that started happening were his moles started falling off. And I told you guys about that before, but he also had a really big one on his back that I didn't know about, because I guess the nurses knew because they were helping him, in the shower and changing clothes and all that kind of stuff. And the head honcho, that's what he calls her, the head honcho nurse had to come and look because it had just fallen off in like the period of like the time that the nurse came at one point to check in to the next time. And I don't know how long that was. And when she reported it, the lead nurse or whoever was in charge is like, I have to see that myself. And so I wanted to share with you guys Dad explaining this. So I want to add this to the stage here.
I'm starting to sleep on my left side. I couldn't do it with my back.
I didn't know that.
First time. I've always like this, period.
Oh,
Now I'm able to, if I'm not sleeping,
You can go to your
like
side.
this and nothing.
Nice.
Nothing.
That's
huge.
awesome.
See, Jed,
All
every
these
time
mile
I talk
markers.
to him, I know, like
Something new.
and like his eyes,
Never
he had the
touch a Mountain
rash
Dew again.
disappear.
me
You had the
neither.
rash disappear off your back.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get
You
Joe to
got your
stop buying
muscles coming back in.
I didn't remember the one. I didn't even want to look. I never even looked to see if it was okay. I just said, no use looking at it. Let's go.
Yeah. And it ended up disappearing.
And she comes in. And goes, nothing. It's clean. I said, well, today I took a shower today. It doesn't matter. It won't do it.
Yeah.
And so, the rash and the black
God washed it away.
piece, something was big. She kept going like that.
Well, maybe
It was that big?
maybe it was
That's what
maybe
her-
it was
Getting
toxins.
out. Yeah. So anyway, I just thought that was so cool.
I love it. I love it.
He's just like, I told her I showered that day.
He washed it off.
Somebody's joking around, and so I'm sure it was kind of like shocking for the nurse. Like, I don't think a mole's going to shower off. That's this big.
Mhm.
But I just think that is how the body gets rid of things, right? Through the skin, through tears, through saliva, through urination, all of the things. And so how incredible is it that God has literally made just all of these little things happen? But I thought that was so cute. And I also wanted people to see how great he's doing. He is literally standing at the counter when he could be sitting. He's not.
Yeah.
And he's got energy, and he loves being the center of attention. And so it was really cool.
Yeah.
May 30 was walking without a walker and physical therapy. This is when he started really affecting the people in the rehab center. And to this day, he's still at the rehab center. His roommate has lost 2 inches on his belt, and he has gone from being exclusive wheelchair bound for 2 years in there, not wanting to go to rehab, not want to do physical therapy, to now walking on a walker, going every day to physical therapy.
Nice.
It's so cool because it's contagious, y'all. And just what an incredible impact you've made on our family's life. And I'm so thankful we trusted you as our team. I mean, it's just awesome. I love hearing it because like his son came in and was telling my sister Dina, we are like so amazed at how great of an influence your dad has been on my father. He's quit eating as much and not having desserts and stuff like that.
Well, I tell you what, Carmen, you and your sisters and your whole family and your whole team, I think that's probably made the most significant difference because, and we see this on a regular basis where we have people that come to us that have the team, that have the the family and the support structure and all that, and we have people that come to us and they're trying to do it all by themselves, and it makes such a huge difference when you've got the support structure in place and when everybody, you come together. And that's one of the things that we lack in in the times that we live in is the family structure isn't the same. Our sense of congregation and community has all but gone away. And so if you can recreate that, in your own little microcosm, and you can recreate that environment, that's a healing environment. So you get a lot of credit for that, and so do your sisters and the rest of the team.
Thank you.
We say yay to you.
We really have compassion for anyone who is caring for an elderly parent alone because it is a lot. And thank God I have my sisters. And that's part of what I wanted to share right now. And that is that we went from daily delivery, sometimes twice a day, to drop off food so that, he would have healthy, fresh, amazing, warm, food. But on May 19th was the first time I dropped off enough food for him for a week, stick it in his refrigerator. He had to coordinate and, put it all together. And it was tough because he had to eat everything cold until my sister Dina hacked that one and she got him a food warmer. And so he just has to, put it in there now, which is great. And then, like I said earlier, the 4th of July, him putting on his Marine Corps uniform was a really big deal for our family. Like that was really cool. And that's why I wanted to share that. And then I already told you about what the nurse said. That was November 21st, that video. He's gained weight since then. So he's even, doing better than that, which is awesome. Also, January 8th this year, for the first time in a long time, like maybe like longer than since before he got cancer, he could sleep on his left side. It has always caused him too much pain. And so that was another big deal that just happened. And then let's see, on January 11th, he announced that he had been working out 50 minutes a day, every single day.
Wow.
Yeah. And then on January 16th is when he hit 167. He's probably 168 plus. He's really wanting to get to that 170 mark. On January 20th, he got his bossy attitude back.
Nice.
We're like, but I think
There may
that's
be
great.
something about his marine history there.
Yeah, I don't know. It was so funny to us because we were embracing it instead of being upset about it. You know, like we were like, okay, this is great. And then just recently, he ran out of food because usually we were always, and then my sister Dina really loads him up. Like he always has leftover from her when I get started. And he ran out of food. We had to like do emergency food delivery, which is great because that means his appetite had increased.
Yeah.
And then let's see, February 5th. Is when he announced he had some muscles, and not just the one that he had at Thanksgiving, but he's like, when I take off my shirt, I can see muscles.
I love it. I love
That
it.
was really cool. And then this was the most recent one on February 12th. He said he's starving like a teenager.
That's wonderful.
That is.
And for people who get really strung out about keto, your dad gained like what, 16 pounds?
No, he was 130 and he's 168.
Almost 40.
Almost 40 pounds in a year.
Unbelievable. And I know it wasn't like totally strict keto the entire time, but mostly keto. Very clean.
It's
all
keto
organic.
since April, but you're right. He's not been in ketosis at all. He's just eating those foods.
Yeah. He's eating good fats. He's eating organic foods. He's drinking goat's milk.
Well, he's a great example of, when we develop a plan, I'm gonna give you the 30 point or 40 point, this is 100% perfection based on what I know. And like I said before, I don't know everything. I'm not, I don't have any magic tricks up my sleeve, but I have done this for a while. I have a lot of experience, and I can generally help people. So, but your dad basically told all of us, like, well, I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do that, and that's one of the things that that's completely fine with me. Especially in my role as a consultant in this business, it's like, I'm going to tell you what I would recommend doing. And then you get to, I tell people all the time, I have the easy job. I get to look through the data and I get to try to build this relationship so that I can really pick apart your terrain and put together the best plan for you. But I tell people on a almost daily basis, you're the captain of your ship and you get to pick and choose, what you're going to do out of this. And, at the end of the day, you got to decide what you can maintain. And of course you have to think of the full situation, where you're at health wise and all that kind of stuff. And if you're not doing all of it, then you're not going to get the full benefit there. But but who am I to say that you either you have to do all this or you can't be a client of mine?
Right.
I think that goes back to the whole arrogance that comes out of medical school. And, at the end of the day, I think what's important, is that people get to keep their autonomy. And I think that there's a certain amount of confidence that breeds when you're working with somebody who says, all right, look, these are the 10 or 20 or 30 things that you can do. Then let's talk about what you're going to do. And if you want to leave off some parts of the plan, then let's really streamline it so that if you're leaving this one thing off, maybe you don't want to do this other thing because they kind of work together. But that's, with the experience that I've got, I'm pretty well versed in how to help people optimize the parts of the plan that they're willing to do. And I tell people all the time, I have the easy job. I get to tell you what to do. You have the hard job. You have to do it.
He is so good about being unconditional in his love and patience.
And I have to say, I love that part because, like I said, we literally could not get to get him in ketosis. It wasn't going to work. Yeah. And that's why I said we're at 60% of what that book, because that's a lot of the book, but we're still eating those things, and it's working enough to keep him healthier and healthier, getting rid, shedding more and more of becoming whole again.
Yeah.
So before we left, because I want you guys to be able to share anything that you want to share, but I wanted your comments on, I had recently watched an incredible video on spontaneous healing, and it was just research that had to do with, it was a summary of research that had to do with the things that go into it, which is really interesting because you said something about the being autonomous, and that is what made me go, oh yeah, I wanted to read this list to people. So spontaneous healing, here's some of the things that are very indicative of that. First of all, the willingness to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, believing in self-transformation, not believing in Micah and Tye, not believing in,
Right.
but actually believing that you can heal based on your own choices that God told you to do. And really, who knows? Maybe that is God telling him, you don't have to do that. You know, this can be a lot easier. Just keep eating right. And then disrupt the rut that got you there. Right. Usually there's been some great thing that happens that shifts somebody into, I'm done. I'm done holding on to whatever it was. I'm going to forgive. I had a near-death experience. I almost died of pneumonia. Whatever it is, they had something that really disrupted. And I think that doesn't have to be from the outside. That can be from the inside. You can disrupt from the inside. There was profound personal change, as you know, the sleeping, the eating, what you eat, how you eat it, when you eat it. You know, all of the working out, all of the great attitude, holding that vision, all of those things. Let's see, believing that remarkable recovery can happen. Increase autonomous behavior. I already said that one. Okay, relationships and spiritual beliefs. So you had touched on both of those, and I believe that that's the reason why Tye has this ability to hold those two pillars when you're first working with her, that I think are essential to the healing process. It is literally
absolutely. I couldn't do my job without Tye. There's just no doubt about that.
Well, we couldn't have either. So thank you for bringing her along. We appreciate it. And then rejecting limited aspects. And that's huge. There's a mountain in front of me, but with this faith of a mustard seed, I'm going to move that. Let's see what else is there. An openness to a greater sense of the world, of God, and of self, which I thought 100%.
Right.
And then a movement towards psychological wholeness.
Yes. Amen. Yep.
And this is a piece that when a family goes through something like this, everyone has more work to do. Everyone has more responsibility. It's not human nature to want those things. And so when you...
Especially when we've been conditioned to turn that part of our brains off.
Yep.
There you go. And so when you go, when you're off and everybody's happy, and then you have an elderly person in your family have a crisis, if you have a correct family process, everyone's responsible, right? What happens though is all the old family dynamics start coming back. And that to me is the psychological wholeness that is a gift if you're willing to see it. So you start having these feelings and you're getting triggered, or things are happening, or it's too much, it's too heavy to carry, or whatever. Sometimes it's literally just you're holding old family system dynamics. And I really wanted to share that because I feel like it's an important piece. And it was one of the things that Tye touched on early with give her a break. You know, she didn't even know why I needed a break, but I needed a break. And I thought that was really, really important piece to, you know, maybe not spontaneous healing, but pretty darn fast. I mean, this has only been a year. He's doing fantastic. And then one of the greatest questions they said that you can ask somebody to get them thinking in terms of healing quickly is, where is your wholeness not lived out? That has nothing to do with a blood test. That has nothing to do with symptoms. This is how much the mind, body, spirit all comes together. And so then, of course, diet, movement, breaking addictions, and lots of water. So I turn it over to you. I would love your comments on that. And then start sharing anything you want about your business, how people get a hold of you, all that kind of stuff.
I think I'll kind of start off with the fact that us building a relationship, Carmen, and I kind of wanted to throw a question back at you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You said that you trusted us, and I want to ask you about that. Talk to me about that. What was that process like for you? You didn't know us.
So I appreciated you on authority, because I'm a big person that if I have somebody that I think of my world as a target and I'm in the bullseye, and Cheryl Back has made her way into the inner circles. And because she's in the inner circle, based on her authority was number one. But I'm also very well read, very well researched. And so when you guys aligned with all of the things that I knew from my past and the horrors that I went through, in my teens with my mom dying of cancer, I watched her beautiful veins, I've told you before, go from being blue to being literally brown and looking like wires. And I knew as a child, this can't be good for her, And so when you guys were talking about this metabolic approach, it also seemed to me like, okay, this person's 81 years old. He doesn't have, well, I mean, maybe he could live to 600. I'm not going to speak over him, but the average person doesn't have that. And so I was thinking, Dad, when you're making these choices, you also have to look at quality of life. Maybe not doing chemo and not having radiation and not having surgery will give you a quality of life that would be more beautiful for a couple of years. And you guys not only knew about that, but you had steps to take. You had tests that could improve the terrain, and then you had the blood tests that would. And that's another thing. I'm glad that we brought that up. Your blood tests are so far beyond anything that a usual oncologist would do. So far removed, like a whole, like this is optimal level. This is where they are, how you're reading them. You're reading them not for norms. You're reading them for, him to become better.
Optimal.
And so I could feel that, but to be honest, Tye was my lifeline during that first, I think I called her March 7th. So the first 10, 20 days. And then once we had it wrapped around and Dad had agreed to what he wanted to do, that's what we went with. It was his decision. It was, because at one point, I don't know if you guys remember, but when he was in the hospital, he had changed his mind. He kind of panicked, and he had told the doctor, I want to go ahead and I want to fight this like the best I can with chemotherapy. Right. And the only problem I had with that was that they didn't give him full disclosure. And so I read aloud to him what they were scanning over, and what they don't have time to do, right?
That's another big principle of our business is informed consent.
Yeah.
And that has been lost to conventional medicine 99% of the time. They don't, and it gets even worse than that. A lot of the clinicians don't even know enough about the treatments to give informed consent. And so, I mean, I don't think I have to probably convince too many of your audience that the medical system's kind of fallen apart. It was already falling apart. The wheels had come off prior to COVID. I think COVID was just kind of what made everybody aware of just how bad it had gotten in the medical system.
It's been going on since my mom had cancer.
Oh yeah, this has been going on for well over 100 years.
Absolutely.
Maybe one day we could do a history of modern medicine show.
Oh man.
Yeah, no, that would be fascinating. Actually, there's a lot of good rabbit trails there. I've done a lot of studying of that as well. Okay, so what were we? I was asking you guys about the spontaneous healing, if there's anything that you guys wanted to add to that. But I do think it's kind of interesting because if we were to check, you guys had touched on so many of these.
Yeah.
Which is, of course we didn't plan that or, anything, which is really cool. I love that.
Well, I think something that we've embraced lately, and certainly something that we have come to in our own lives, is digging deep spiritually and emotionally and dealing with not only childhood trauma, but teenage trauma, adulthood trauma. The body does keep the score. And if you're not paying attention to what's going on in your internal dialogue and underneath the surface, it can put you in a hole that you cannot climb out of.
Yeah.
So, we do recommend a lot of counseling to some of our clients who may struggle with some emotional issues or some healing or unforgiveness issues, or just really wrapping their mind around a cancer diagnosis. I mean, that can bring on PTSD just in and of itself. But most of us have issues that we work, and the outward appearance looks really good, but are we digging deep to deal with those issues? And how healthy are we? What does our thought process look like? And I want to speak to the ladies there, because we tend to be catastrophic thinkers. We ruminate and we think and we create scenarios. What does that do to us? Every time we concentrate on something that is negative, we're speaking negative words, the helix in our DNA will twist and tight and stretch out, and it causes inflammation in our bodies. Yeah. Negative internal dialogue will do that to us. And so it's really important that we're thinking about ourselves in a loving way, that we see ourselves as someone worth helping, but that takes discipline, and it does take integrity, which means we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and do we have the integrity to do this? Do we have the integrity to lead somebody else through this? The thing that Micah and I love about this business more than anything else is being able to talk about the Lord when our clients are okay with it, because we are going to give people spiritual autonomy. We're not going to breathe this down their necks if that's not something that they're okay with. We want everyone to be able to embrace their healing, and we'll meet them where they're at, just like Jesus does for us. He meets us where we're at, right? Yeah. So the relationship is the most important thing, but we actually believe in what we do. Micah has seen amazing results for over 20 years. I am new to this. I've been in the health and wellness industry most of my adult career and life, but I didn't know what to expect coming into this. Mm-hmm. And what we have seen in the last 4 years is most of our stage 4 cancering clients, their lives have been extended by 2 or 3 years.
Can I tell people about you?
Yeah. What are you going to tell?
So this is a funny story about Tye. When we
silver bullet.
When we first,
it's gotta work.
When we first started the business, we were talking about all the different things that we could kind of help people have, find access to and all that kind of stuff. And Tye, I was trying to tell her in the beginning that this was going to be, a tough road because, emotionally and spiritually and all that, working with cancer clients and patients can be very, very taxing. And Tye thought that everybody was going to be cured from cancer by doing IV vitamin C.
Vitamin C, baby. That's going to cure everybody in the whole world.
And I told her for 6 months or a year, I was like, that's not how this works. I mean, I wish that it was that simple, but that's just one little piece of the big overall terrain plan. And so like I said before, cancer is still cancer. But there's so many things that you can do to help fix the bigger picture. You got to, we are, made in the image of God. We've got a physical body, we've got a soul, and we've got a spirit. We're triune in the same way that God is a triune God. And, Tye was talking about the ladies earlier. Well, I'll talk, about the men. I mean, it's really frustrating to be in a culture as kind of, for lack of a better term, as an awake man, to see that most conversations in the male segregated part of society revolve around weather and sports teams. And that's such a lack of depth of character, and it's so superficial, and there's no spiritual maturity there. There's certainly no emotional maturity there. And when we live this superficial life that we are conditioned to live, I mean, that's what our culture, we are like that for a reason. And that's actually one of the reasons we named the business Worldview Wellness, because that is a conditioned superficial worldview that does not allow people to know themselves. And when you don't know yourself, you don't know who you are. You don't have an identity. And if you don't have an identity and you don't know yourself, and the only thing that you can talk about with other men are sports teams and weather, then there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that you're leaving on the table. The placebo, we're talking about, those miraculous healings and remissions and that type of thing. There's one thing that all of those have in common. The people that experience those things have an event that happens to them where there's a spark that turns on.
Yep.
And they get excited about growing emotionally, spiritually, everything. When they get that spark that happens, and we've seen that spark happen like on the very first visit, and we've seen that spark happen after 2 years. Everybody's on their own timeline.
Right.
And all we can do is kind of help push people along the timeline and maybe hopefully a little bit faster, and then also provide the tools to help people who are ready and willing to engage on that front. Get to where that spark is. But the people that engage on that level in their emotional and spiritual health, those people, it's almost like there's two separate groups. Those people by and far do very well. Now that doesn't mean that they all get miraculously healed,
right?
But the people that do that, if they don't get miraculously healed, then they still have vastly improved quality and quantity.
What a powerhouse journey. So really it's all about relationships. Micah and I lean on each other very heavily. He's gifted in so many areas that I am clueless about, and the most important thing about where you're at in your journey is understanding that you may know something but you don't know nothing. Right? And being open to learning, because we learn with our clients. We don't know everything. And Micah is wonderfully humble about that, is that he'll say, look, I don't know it, but I'm about to find out for you.
Yeah.
So it's being willing. And for your listener who said, I would never trust anybody who does, like this naturopathic holistic, you might know a lot of something, but you don't know nothing. Investigate. Treat yourself like you're someone worth honoring and like you're someone worth helping. There's something to it. And as you and I both know, Carmen, we've seen it. We've literally seen it. We've seen the transformation. And maybe it's not about 10 years of life extension, but what about that last year? And they get this amazing journey that was worth all of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how good our God is. And those are the kinds of journeys that he walks us on. And Micah and I have been engaging in not only spiritual wellness, but emotional wellness, because if you are not emotionally and spiritually well, you can do all the things and take all the things and do all the things, but you are not going to hit this level up here. And this is where we all want to be, up here. And healing comes from the spirit and the soul and the heart and forgiveness and understanding and compassion and love. And these are all things that our Father taught us. And we've walked away from it. The Bible is the most excellent guideline to daily living. Keep running that race. Be physically active. Get outside and enjoy God's creation and nature. Take your thoughts captive. Put on your weapons of war. This is war, right? This is war to maintain our health, to understand that there is another dimension, one that is actually trying to help and one that's actually trying to hurt. Right. And so we want to engage with our clients as deeply as they'll let us. And for those that don't want to go that deep, that's okay. That's okay. We're here when you're ready to. You can dive in anytime the water's warm.
Well, and on that point, from an emotional perspective, kind of from a biblical approach, and I'll teach this to people sometimes if I feel like they're ready for it. From a biblical approach, the opposite of love is fear. And that is what blocks most people from healing. And it's hard to tell somebody, oh, don't be afraid. You just got told you got cancer, or you just got this really bad autoimmune diagnosis. But don't be afraid, right? So that, I've seen some people get that spark then, it's like, oh, all right. So how do I, make sense of the fact that I've got this diagnosis, but I don't have to be afraid of it. And so that in and of itself is its own journey. But the people that dig in there, the people that aren't afraid to read some books and to, make themselves a little bit more spiritually and emotionally vulnerable and have some tough conversations and go through some tough things in order to get to that light on the other side of the tunnel, Those are the people that do the best.
And that goes to the spontaneous healing, which is
That's
to get your wholeness, to be able to live your wholeness out. And I think a lot of people don't give that any merit at all. And I think they're missing a huge piece to their healing.
There's a clinician friend of mine who's got a PhD in quantum physics. We were having a discussion one day about the spiritual realm and the way that we both see things. Our opinion, of course, he's got a PhD in it, so his opinion probably weighs a little bit more than mine. But his opinion and my opinion overlap on the fact that we think that that's 99% of our health and wellness. Is what happens in that spiritual realm, which lines up with Ephesians 6. Talking about weapons of our warfare and what we're really fighting against, not flesh and blood, but against spiritual powers and high places and those types of things. So basically our thoughts are that the spiritual realm is what science over the last 30-40 years has shown to be the quantum realm.
Right.
And that we don't have a perfect overlap to be able to contextualize that, to the nth degree. But, that's the way I feel. And if we can get over this superficiality that we've been conditioned to operate in, into this, materialistic worldview that most people have, even a lot of Christians have that worldview. They don't think that they do, but they also don't understand how hardcore they've been conditioned and programmed to be a certain way.
Right.
And so it's about not being afraid of pulling those layers of the onion off and really digging deep. And if you get to that level where you're starting to get excited about digging deep and about really working on that emotional and spiritual thing, then the supplements and the diet and the hydration and the exercise and all that works 10 times as good.
Yeah.
So
I call it life spark. It's like that God molecule, that first one that's you. I just feel like, and when it's turned on and when it's low, like you can tell. And really and truly, if you can get into a place where you can remind yourselves of the characteristics of God, you have a lot less to fear. It's definitely something that I go through with almost every client. And so there was one last question that I had for you guys. And one of the things that has kind of blown me away in my work that I do with people is how much my clients have taught me about how to share and teach them to close the gap. So I was curious if you've made any changes recently, or if you've had any great epiphanies, or if there's been changes in the way that you do business because of your clients, just because I love learning about, what people do.
The biggest change from my perspective is for the first few years of our business and all the way back into my clinical practice, I've always been a big believer in counseling. I think that counseling is a wonderful thing, and there's not one person alive that couldn't benefit from some counseling, because we all have baggage.
Totally agree.
But our luggage might look different, and what's in the luggage might be a little bit different. But we all carry that suitcase around with us. And so the way that I used to deal with that in the past was to, let people know up front that I'm a firm believer in counseling, but I'm also a firm believer that most counselors are not equipped to help people very well.
I agree.
And so I was always very big about making sure that they understood that I wanted them to do counseling, but I didn't want them to just go to anybody for counseling, because most people that are just doing talk therapy, not that there's no benefit to talk therapy, but it's
a good stage.
When you've just been given a diagnosis, that's not the time for talk therapy. You need to get someone who's willing to go get in the trenches with you and hash it out. So probably the biggest change that's happened over the last maybe 6 to 9 months for me on my side of things is on that peace pillar and the emotional and spiritual growth. I've been on my own journey recently, that's involved a lot of, reading and study and all that kind of thing. So where I wouldn't get a whole lot of people, high percentage of people that would just immediately jump out and go do counseling, I've basically built a whole library of different books that I can kind of discern what people need to read what book based on their history and their terrain and all that type of thing. So I'm basically leading people down that own journey of self-discovery, so that they can at least have a conscious awareness of what those tools look like.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
then sometimes people don't need to do counseling after that.
Yeah, that's true.
And then, but the people that still do will have a framework
More open
after
to,
reading some of those books so that they can get more out of the counseling,
right,
and maybe they don't have to go as long.
right.
But so I think, we haven't really changed a whole lot of as far as like the labs
I think
and
we've become much more flexible
Yeah.
in understanding what our clients need and meeting them there. And
that's true.
we certainly have changed separately in the way that I approach clients and the way he approaches clients. And we do an awful lot of reasoning together about our clients and what we feel like would be the best thing for them. And
Yeah.
I'm aware that his giftings are very different from mine. So I understand that I need to listen.
Yeah.
Really listen. And he is really, really good about listening to me as well when I feel, when I have some discernment on someone's emotional well-being or what I think might be something that we need to be paying attention to. Another thing that the Lord has really been working with me on is staying really humble. Again, we may know a lot, but we don't know nothing.
Amen.
And so, when we were, I think we were watching Michael Heiser the other day. He is no longer with us. He actually died of, I think, colon cancer last year. Wonderful, wonderful theologian, and he's talking about Moses. And when God told Moses to give his people water, and then Moses said, we are tired of you complaining. And then he hit the rock instead of speaking to the rock. Why?
Oh, Moses.
Once he equated himself with God by saying, we're sick of your grumbling. And then another time, instead of speaking to the rock, he hit it. So he took powers into his own hands.
Yeah.
And God has really been dealing with me about that. I'm not the author of health. I'm not the author of all emotional wisdom. I'm not the author of being the best client advocate ever, but the Holy Spirit can certainly guide us through those things.
Yeah.
And wisdom comes from all different places. But God is so good to lead us in those things that we really need to know and that we really need to embrace. And then we also need to understand that there are, be open to the information. We don't have to be afraid of anything.
Right.
Amen.
Flexibility. And I look forward to spontaneously healing more and more people as we learn to collapse this bell curve that all the things happen, but they happen slowly. Imagine if we could somehow get them to incorporate simultaneously. It'd be pretty cool.
It'd be beautiful.
Thank you both for coming. Again, Tye and Micah Jackson of Worldview Wellness. And you can find the link to their website in the description box. Micah is a physician's assistant, but he is you're more of a counselor in this role, right?
Consultant, yeah.
Consultant, sorry, wrong word. And then
I do a little bit of counseling too, though.
Yeah, and then Micah is the patient advocate, and so and she's just a spirit advocate and a just happy advocate. She's just
she is.
She's an all-around just advocate. So if anyone has any questions, I would reach out to them. Highly recommend working with them. They're very easy to work with, and they'll know when to step you up or step you down. And that was another thing that I really liked and trusted about you guys. Like, you could see Dad getting better, and you're like, we don't have to talk so much. We can move it back. Yeah. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. And for anyone that cares, I'm on Simcast tonight with Chrissy Myers. And I think that starts at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And thanks again to my sisters and Cheryl Beck. We'll see you guys all later.
Thanks, Carmen.
Thanks, Carmen.
Bye.